Wolfpack fans, welcome back to our new segment called Tiny Wins, where we spotlight a student and give them a chance to tell their story. Today, our student is Olivier Retourne. Hi, Olivier.
How are you, Marcy?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. You got me to campus earlier than than I would have been otherwise. But no, it's great. It's my first time here down at on Centennial campus, right? In the library here, and it's interesting because as a nuclear engineer, we're kind of relegated up to main campus. So this will give me a good opportunity to kind of explore and see what's available to us.
Yes, welcome to the other side of the planet. It's completely different than main campus, and most of our grad students are here on
Yeah.
Centennial. So I'm glad you got introduced to the Hunt Library and could join us at this beautiful studio today. We're going to jump in with just a little bit about you. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So, I've kind of been everywhere all my life. Whether it's like where I've had opportunities to live, some time in France, and just coast to coast, even in the United States. But also, what sort of things I've been into. I did water polo in high school, but I also did theater, and I was in the Boy Scouts, and I had a lot of balls that I was juggling, and now it's kind of good to slow down a bit. I was working full time when I graduated with my master's from RPI in nuclear engineering, and I was getting comfortable, right? But I felt that I could do more, and that's why I'm here, right? So it's kind of one of the first things I was going to actually talk about with you today, but I'll let you get to your questions to that regard. But yeah, I'm glad to be here to be able to pursue a PhD and kind of push what there is.
Absolutely. First year of your PhD, coming in with your master's
Mhm.
degree, as you mentioned, new part of the country and new experience. A theater person who's going to be a nuclear engineer. That just doesn't go together for me. How does that
Yeah,
all connect?
I don't know. I've just personality maybe, that's some of it, maybe a little bit much at times, but the whole thing is I am someone who's always been more extroverted per se. I enjoy people, which is not typical of an engineer, right? But I think it gives me a sort of edge. So when I was working full time, I was able to connect with other teams. We tend to silo ourselves, not just in a professional environment, but even socially, right? You see, you have cliques and what have you. People are not necessarily willing to spread out more. I have too little shame where I'm willing to just put myself out there and try to connect.
And connecting is so important. You are a part of a group that is in its inaugural phase this year called Smooth Sailing. I think there's going to be around 60 of us gathering later today for a session together. Anything you would like to plug about that for other future grad students who are wondering about how to get out of the blinders of just being very isolated to meet people in other parts of the college?
Yeah, well, for me, also big nerd. I was also in a fraternity in university. I was in an a cappella group at the same time, right? And you don't necessarily need to do something that's that high commitment, but if you're into board games or anything else, I don't know if it's sports, there are clubs available to you. You just have to be willing to look. It's so easy to just sit in your apartment or your dorm or wherever you are, but it's often worth it to connect. Professional organizations, even for nuclear. I won't shut up about nuclear, right? But they have ANS, which is the American Nuclear Society. It's undergrads and grads. They hold movie nights and they have other sorts of events that it's great to take advantage of. That's how you connect with others.
I love that you put yourself out there, even over last semester. I know a group of us walked around downtown Raleigh and explored some of the different decorations for the holidays. And like you said, it's really easy to just go, oh, I don't have time for that. But building community and relationships is such a part of grad school.
Yeah, it was great, and I'm fortunate enough to I have a car. Kind of needed a car coming from DC. I metroed to work pretty much every day, so coming down here was definitely required. And especially when I saw that other people needed a ride, I don't know. It was just another motivator in a way because by me just taking the time to go, that means I'm also enabling other people to go as well, which is maybe, a little too high and mighty sort of approach, but I thought that it was valuable, and I had a ton of fun. It was great that we were able to do that. Get out, walk a bit as well. Sometimes it's not so easy to just take time and just be outside, which sounds kind of silly, but one of the things that they do on campus on Thursdays is they have this free mom thing, which you're smiling, so you know what it is. And I had just accidentally into it last semester when I decided to take a walk, right? Not sit in the lab staring at my computer, but go outside. And they have little treats that they give out for free. They have bouquets you can make. There's a guy there, Dan the man, who's playing music, and he invites students to come and join him. It's great that we have those types of opportunities.
I'm glad you plugged that because I was looking over at my podcast editors who are new to the university, thinking if you haven't discovered Free Moms yet, you got to check it out. I think they're on Centennial and main
Yes, they
campus
do.
now.
They do both.
So we'll have to look up when the Centennial one is, but Thursdays. I remember my TA last semester, she was gluten free and she said, they have gluten free
Hmm.
cookies for
Yeah,
me.
they have
She was
gluten-free
so
vegan
excited.
treats. It's
It was like the
great.
highlight of her week was
Oh yeah.
just walking by this little booth of moms that gave hugs and free baked goods. All right, so now we're going to get into our challenge. So as
Okay.
you know, this segment is called Tiny Wins. What is a challenge you faced in grad school that it didn't look huge,
Hmm.
big, enormous from the outside, but felt really, really heavy for you in the moment?
Yeah. Well, this is something that I alluded to earlier, and maybe it's a little bit of a cop out, but when I was thinking about this question, I was trying to think like what was that challenge? And for me, it wasn't even when I was in grad school; it was before I even applied. I don't want to sound like I'm too much reading from my notes, but it's kind of good to make sure I have some direction because for me, it really was the internal battle of even applying in the first place. There's this thing we've talked about a lot of things in Smooth Sailing, which has been a great program to connect with other first year PhD students. One of the things we talked a lot about was imposter syndrome and other sort of phenomena that might impact not just us coming into the program, but everyone. And I kind of went through a self rejection phase. I think I was trying to look it up, and I think they call it prejection essentially, as opposed to rejection, because you are saying I can't do this before anyone else has had the opportunity to even consider you in the first place. And this connects to some stuff later on as well. But for me, it was wondering, is this even right? Right? I was in, like I said, a very comfortable engineering job. Right? I was in DC. Not that there's nothing wrong with Raleigh, but it's a change, right? And change is hard. That's not a very deep thought, but I just wasn't sure what to do. And I almost didn't apply to schools. I had some deadlines coming up, and I think some applications had opened up in October. I didn't even actually apply until November. I kind of froze and wasn't sure if I had just put in my head that I wanted to do it. And you know what? In the end, it was just about realizing that saying I'm not good enough or I can't make it is silly. If you don't try, then of course you're not going to make it. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
I think that was
Uh,
Wayne Gretzky.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I love that quote. Yeah. So you got the confidence to apply, even though you were doubting yourself, is what I'm hearing. What exactly happened that got you over that hurdle of just staying in the comfort zone? I mean, it doesn't even sound like a comfort zone to be honest.
Yeah.
You have this dream job, you're in DC, you're an engineer. It sounds like you're living a great life,
Oh yeah.
but to push yourself to now be like, I want to get my doctorate. I'm going to just be that ambitious. What got you over that fear of maybe it was fear of failure when you thought you
Yeah.
might not get
Well,
in?
well, yeah, that's one of the things. I think that's one of the things that underscores a lot of what I don't want to say pushes us, but pushed me at least away from a lot of things in life, right? That there's a challenge that you see and you're just not sure if you can make it. And I don't know if there was really one thing that was the item that pushed me over the edge. It was a bunch of, what is it, the straw that broke the camel's back, right? To try to throw in some more expressions. it was a number of little things that added up. Talking with my girlfriend, right? Talking with my family, talking with my friends and my colleagues, right? I was in an environment where there were PhDs and what that did to them, and some of them were maybe not that they weren't supportive, but they outlined the things that they struggled through when they were going through their PhD. The time constraint, the right money is a big factor as well. So it was really connecting with people again and taking their perspectives and realizing that it was something that would be worthwhile, not just for myself now, for my future family, whatever that might look like, but also it would be a regret, right? If I never apply in the first place, that's something that the projection does, is it leaves you with this, never knowing, right? What could happen?
Yeah. And it worked out. So
Theoretically.
here you are. What would you say you learned about yourself, Olivier, through this process? You got through the doubt.
Yeah.
Now you're on your second semester of your PhD. What is different about you now?
Well, it's funny that you say that, but because it almost felt like I didn't change. I'll bring up why I say that is there's different types of this self-rejection, this prejection. At the end of the first semester, that was when projects were piling up. I had finals. I'm doing research, so I'm supported monetarily through the research that I'm doing with my PI. And there were just a lot of things that started piling up. And I started to let it weigh on me. And throughout the entire semester before that, I had been ahead of schedule, doing very well in all my classes. But that was the point, right near the end, where I started to fall behind, right? I let things kind of fall to the wayside. And one of the things that we've talked about in smooth sailing as well is the perfectionism, right? I'm someone who maybe sometimes good enough isn't good enough, even though it is, right? This is still very good work. It always feels like there's something more. And I didn't want to reach out to people in like my lab group or anything else because I knew that, they had their like some of them writing their dissertations, right? Or they're worrying about their qualifying exams or anything else. So I essentially did another projection, right? Before I even sought out help from peers, I just said, I don't want to be a burden in a way. And it was silly, right? Because in the end, when I did reach out, right, through smooth sailing, right, seeing how other people in smooth sailing were also struggling because it's the end of the semester, right? That's the thing. That's when everything is coming to a head,
And
right?
you don't feel alone because
No,
you
exactly.
realize that,
Because when you do that, you isolate yourself,
yeah,
right? So these are like different versions of the same thing, right? Where either you're rejecting yourself from opportunities or you're rejecting yourself from others, right?
yeah,
If you never reach out, then you don't know.
right. I think that you answered my last question, but if you can maybe conclude with advice you would have to someone else that may be struggling with this, perhaps a potential student who is thinking, should I apply? What would you say to them right now?
Yeah, well, I guess stop the self rejection, the prejection, or whatever you might call it. Um, you don't need to wait until you have it all figured out to reach out to your peers, right? Either for help in a sense of, where you feel overwhelmed or just something you're just not sure about. It's not that I was necessarily overwhelmed with applying to PhD. There wasn't a lot to do. It's a web form, right? I call my advisors for my master's and they were more than happy to hear that I was going for a PhD. I think they had a betting pool going actually, but they were very excited and they were very supportive. They were ready to write me letters of rec, just as is. So it's really about being willing to understand that even if you feel like you're being a burden in some way, that being transparent about things that you need, being willing to be, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, is a kind of gift that you can give yourself.
Yeah. And I'm just going to summarize what I'm taking away too,
Yeah.
Olivier, which is get out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.